High Plains Drifter, 1973, wasn't just a Western. It was a warning born from fear, guilt, and silence. Years later, that warning followed its cast into real life. Illness, sudden death, and haunting downfalls reshaped their futures. So what really happened to them after Hollywood moved on? Let's find out. And you'll never see them the same way again. Clint Eastwood as the Stranger. Clint Eastwood was born on May 31, 1930, in San Francisco, California. At 43 years old, he played the Stranger, the silent, ghost-like gunslinger who embodies vengeance, moral ambiguity, and ruthless justice, in High Plains Drifter, 1973. The character's cold authority and moral cruelty felt unsettlingly authentic, echoing a man already learning to live at a distance from everyone around him. Away from the screen, Eastwood's personal life was marked by prolonged marital strain and emotional fragmentation. His marriage to Maggie Johnson lasted more than 30 years, but it unfolded alongside numerous affairs that gradually hollowed out the relationship. While Eastwood was solidifying his power in Hollywood through films like Dirty Harry and the outlaw Josie Wales, his home life deteriorated in silence. The divorce in 1984 was the inevitable result of years of divided loyalty, emotional absence, and a career that always came first. His later marriage to Dina Ruiz followed a similar arc, collapsing under public scrutiny, imbalance, and unresolved patterns, ending painfully in 2014. As decades passed, the physical and psychological weight of constant work became impossible to ignore. Eastwood continued to place himself under intense pressure, directing and performing in demanding projects well into later life. Films such as $1 Million Baby and Gran Torino revealed an artist increasingly drawn to themes of decline, regret, and reckoning. These films were not detached observations. They reflected a personal confrontation with aging and endurance. In recent years, Eastwood has focused almost entirely on directing, withdrawing from the spotlight while remaining firmly in control behind the scenes. Projects like The Mule, Cry Macho, and Juror No. 2 carried a quieter tone, centered on aging figures seeking meaning after damage has already been done. Today, Clint Eastwood is 96 years old, living privately in California while remaining creatively active. With an estimated net worth of around $375 million, his legacy is unquestionable, but it is inseparable from the cost: broken marriages, emotional distance, and a lifetime spent choosing endurance over intimacy. Verna Bloom as Sarah Belding. Verna Bloom was born on August 7, 1938, in Lynn, Massachusetts. At 35 years old, she played Sarah Belding, the morally fearless woman who dares to stand against violence and collective cowardice, in High Plains Drifter, 1973. Her performance offered rare clarity and courage, grounding the film's brutality in human conscience. Bloom's personal life was shaped by quiet compromise rather than scandal. Married to Jay Cox, a prominent film critic, she chose stability over constant visibility, a decision that slowly narrowed her career path. As her performances in Medium Cool and later Animal House gained recognition, she faced the painful reality of an industry that punished women for stepping back. In her later years, Bloom's life was overtaken by dementia, a progressive illness that stripped away memory, autonomy, and identity. The condition advanced gradually but relentlessly, forcing her into complete withdrawal from public life. For an actress celebrated for emotional precision and psychological depth, the loss of cognitive clarity was devastating, erasing not only her future, but her ability to fully access her past. Before the illness consumed her life, Bloom's final notable work carried symbolic weight. Her role as Mary in The Last Temptation of Christ reflected the same restrained strength and moral gravity she had always embodied. As her health declined, she lived quietly, cared for by family, her legacy preserved through the respect of peers rather than continued visibility. Tragically, Verna Bloom passed away on January 9, 2019, at 80 years old, in Bar Harbor, Maine, due to complications from dementia. With an estimated net worth of around $3 million, she left behind not spectacle or excess, but a lasting testament to integrity, restraint, and the unspoken sacrifices made by women who chose depth over dominance in Hollywood. Mariana Hill, as Callie Travers. Mariana Hill was born on February 9, 1942, in Santa Barbara, California. At 31 years old, she played Callie Travers, the volatile, defiant woman who openly confronts the stranger and refuses to bow to terror, in High Plains Drifter, 1973. Her performance carried raw sexuality and emotional danger, making Callie one of the film's most confrontational and unsettling presences. Off-screen, Hill's personal life was defined by emotional tension rather than public scandal. The instability of an acting career, constant relocations, and long separations created strain that quietly accumulated. During the same era, she appeared in The Godfather Part 2 and cult favorites like The Baby. Her private life became increasingly compartmentalized, with personal connections often sacrificed to professional survival. Health was not marked by a single dramatic diagnosis, but by a conscious withdrawal that spoke volumes. As Hollywood's interest shifted and opportunities narrowed, Hill chose distance over deterioration. By the late 1980s, she stepped away from American film work, choosing teaching and mentorship over constant rejection and instability. In the years that followed, Hill reshaped her identity around education rather than visibility. She moved to England and became deeply involved with the Lee Strasberg studio in London, later teaching independently and through workshops. Her final screen appearances, including Coma Girl, The State of Grace, came not through industry demand but through personal connections with students, reflecting a shift from performer to guide, from spotlight to legacy building. Today, Mariana Hill is 84 years old, living quietly in the United Kingdom, far removed from Hollywood's noise. With an estimated net worth of around $1.5 million, her legacy rests not on fame, but on bold performances, principled withdrawal, and a rare choice to leave before the industry could erase her on its own terms. Mitchell Ryan as Dave Drake. Mitchell Ryan was born on January 11, 1934, in Cincinnati, Ohio. At 39 years old, he played Dave Drake, the corrupt mining boss whose greed and moral decay ignite the town's downfall, in High Plains Drifter, 1973. His controlled cruelty and cold authority made Dave Drake a chilling portrait of power without conscience. Behind the scenes, Ryan's personal life was deeply affected by addiction and its consequences. Married first to Linda Morse, his early career success collided with alcoholism that spiraled out of control. While starring on Dark Shadows, his drinking became severe enough to cost him the role, a public dismissal that nearly ended his television career. The strain extended into his marriage, contributing to emotional distance and eventual divorce, leaving lasting damage that followed him into his second marriage with Barbara Albertine. Ryan's health struggles became more pronounced in his later years. He developed congestive heart failure, a condition that steadily weakened him and limited his ability to work. The illness forced him to slow down. Even so, he continued acting when possible, appearing in projects that demanded less physical intensity but deeper emotional control. Thanks to his persistence, Ryan rebuilt himself after addiction through discipline and persistence. He found renewed respect in films like Lethal Weapon and later television success on Dharma and Greg, where his role as Edward Montgomery introduced him to a new generation. These later performances carried added weight. Sadly, Mitchell Ryan passed away on March 4, 2022, at 88 years old, at his home in Los Angeles due to heart failure. With an estimated net worth of around $3 million, his legacy is one of hard-earned redemption. Billy Curtis as Mordecai. Billy Curtis was born on June 27, 1909, in Springfield, Massachusetts. At 64 years old, he played Mordecai, the loyal, sharp-witted little mayor whose quiet courage and humor bring warmth to a town soaked in fear, in High Plains Drifter, 1973. His gentle presence cut through the film's brutality, offering humanity where almost none survived. Behind that warmth was a marriage tested by pressure rather than scandal. Curtis married Helen Marie Curtis in 1935, and they stayed together for more than 5 decades. But stability never meant ease. As his career rose and fell with Hollywood's appetite for novelty, financial uncertainty and social prejudice followed them everywhere. While Curtis was earning respect through work in Little Cigars and revisiting his legacy tied to The Wizard of Oz, the couple faced the quiet stress of surviving in an industry that rarely paid little people fairly or consistently. As a result, years of physically demanding work left little room for rest. The wear of acrobatics, wrestling, and decades of character roles accumulated. He continued appearing and giving interviews into the 1980s, determined to remain visible on his own terms, even as his body no longer matched the relentless pace of his earlier years. In the final chapter of his career, Curtis stepped back from constant acting but never from identity. He attended reunions, reflected publicly on the dignity of his roles, and embraced the respect that came late but sincerely. His performance in High Plains Drifter became a defining reminder that strength sometimes arrived quietly, standing firm when everyone else looked away. Tragically, Billy Curtis died on November 9, 1988, at 79 years old in Dayton, Nevada, from a heart attack. With an estimated net worth of about $1 million, his legacy remains luminous not because of wealth, but because he proved that grace, humor, and courage could survive even in an industry built to overlook men like him. Geoffrey Lewis as Stacy Bridges. Geoffrey Lewis was born on July 31, 1935, in Plainfield, New Jersey. At 38 years old, he played Stacy Bridges, the ruthless outlaw leader whose cold violence embodies moral collapse and raw evil, in High Plains Drifter, 1973. His performance radiated menace without excess, carving terror into the film's bleak landscape. Lewis's personal life carried a different kind of weight. Married 3 times and the father of 10 children, including actress Juliette Lewis, he lived under constant emotional and financial strain. Divorce, responsibility, and the pressure to provide for a massive family collided with the unpredictability of acting work. Even as he appeared in projects like Salem's Lot and later Flow, stability remained elusive, turning success into something he could never fully relax into. Health became a far harsher enemy in his later years. Lewis struggled with Parkinson's disease and dementia, conditions that quietly eroded his strength and independence. As memory and mobility faded, the man once known for fierce intensity was forced into withdrawal, confronting the cruel reversal of losing control after a lifetime spent mastering it on screen. However, Lewis continued working whenever his health allowed, driven by instinct rather than ambition. He remained connected to acting communities and was still respected for decades of work, including frequent collaborations with Clint Eastwood and memorable appearances in Dharma and Greg. Even diminished, he carried himself with resolve, unwilling to let illness erase the identity he had built role by role. Sadly, Geoffrey Lewis died on April 7, 2015, at 79 years old, after suffering a heart attack in Woodland Hills, California. With an estimated net worth of around $3 million, his legacy endures through sheer volume and intensity, more than 200 performances shaped by grit, survival, and a lifelong refusal to disappear quietly. Stefan Gierasch as Mayor. Jason Hobart. Stefan Gierasch was born on February 5, 1926, in New York City, New York. At 47 years old, he played Mayor Jason Hobart, the weak-willed town leader whose cowardice quietly steers the community toward destruction, in High Plains Drifter, 1973. His performance was unsettling precisely because it was restrained, revealing how moral collapse often hides behind politeness and fear, rather than overt cruelty. In his private life, Gierasch's greatest strain came from balancing long-term commitment with an unforgiving profession. Married to actress Hedy Sontag for more than 3 decades, he carried the pressure of providing stability while his career remained largely confined to supporting roles. Even as he appeared in respected films like Jeremiah Johnson and What's Up, Doc?, leading opportunities never fully materialized, creating a quiet frustration that lingered beneath an otherwise steady family life. After decades of intense work on stage and screen, Gierasch's physical resilience faded, limiting the energy he once brought to character roles. The absence of public drama masked a slower, more intimate decline, one that narrowed his world to home and family. However, his final years were marked by selective appearances rather than ambition. Roles in films like Junior and Murder in the First reflected his enduring reliability, even as age made work more sporadic. Television audiences still recognized his face from decades of appearances on series such as MASH, Kung Fu, and ER, reminders of a career built on consistency rather than stardom. Sadly, Stefan Gierasch died on September 6, 2014, at 88 years old after suffering a stroke at his home in Santa Monica, California. With an estimated net worth of around $2 million, he left behind a legacy of quiet intensity, an actor whose power lay not in dominance, but in exposing how easily fear can hollow out authority. Jack Ging as Morgan Allen. Jack Ging was born on November 30, 1931, in Alva, Oklahoma. At 42 years old, he played Morgan Allen, the greedy mining boss whose corruption invites violent retribution, in High Plains Drifter, 1973. His performance captured ambition, stripped of conscience, a man convinced power could shield him from consequence. Ging's personal life was shaped by instability and repeated reinvention. Married 3 times, his relationships were strained by constant career transitions, relocations, and the emotional toll of starting over. While he gained visibility through roles on Mannix and early collaborations with Clint Eastwood, the effort to maintain family balance alongside professional survival proved exhausting, leaving scars that divorce could not fully erase. Physically, Ging carried the aftermath of an earlier life as an athlete and Marine. Old sports injuries and the wear of physical roles accumulated over time, gradually limiting his stamina. Aging brought additional health complications that forced him to slow down, replacing the rugged presence audiences once associated with him with a quieter endurance. In his later career, Ging found renewed recognition through television rather than film. His long run on the A-Team as General Harlan Bull Fulbright reintroduced him to a new generation, while guest roles continued steadily into the 1990s. Outside acting, he turned toward real estate and golf, building financial security and a calmer rhythm far removed from the volatility of Hollywood. Tragically, Jack Ging died on September 9, 2022, at 90 years old, in La Quinta, California, from natural causes related to age. With an estimated net worth of around $2 million, his legacy endures as that of a resilient character actor, one who survived reinvention, personal loss, and physical decline without ever surrendering his professional dignity. Ted Hartley as Louis Belding. Ted Hartley was born on November 6, 1924, in Omaha, Nebraska. At 49 years old, he played Louis Belding, the frightened husband trapped inside the town's collective cowardice, in High Plains Drifter, 1973. His quiet, restrained performance added an unsettling layer to the film, embodying how fear corrodes dignity long before violence arrives. Hartley's emotional struggles were closely tied to his marriage to Dina Merrill, whom he married in 1989. Their relationship carried the weight of shared responsibility, public visibility, and later profound loss. When Merrill's health declined and she passed away in 2017, Hartley was left navigating grief while still overseeing demanding business obligations. The absence of his partner reshaped his final years, replacing companionship with silence and memory. Physical suffering had already altered his life decades earlier. In the early 1960s, a catastrophic naval aircraft crash threw Hartley from his jet, breaking his back and permanently ending his career as a fighter pilot. The injury forced a painful reinvention, closing the door on the identity he had built in uniform and leaving lasting physical limitations that never fully disappeared. In the later stages of his professional life, Hartley withdrew from acting and focused almost entirely on leadership and production. As CEO of RKO Pictures, he poured his energy into reviving a fallen studio, producing projects such as Mighty Joe Young, 1998, and Shade, 2003. These years were marked not by applause, but by relentless decision-making and financial risk, carried largely out of public view. Sadly, Ted Hartley died on October 10, 2025, at 100 years old, in New York City. With an estimated net worth of around $100 million, his legacy is one of reinvention under pressure. Proof that survival sometimes means abandoning the spotlight to carry responsibility in silence. Anthony James as Cole Carlin. Anthony James was born on July 22, 1942, in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. At 31 years old, he played Cole Carlin, a brutally violent outlaw whose cruelty summons supernatural revenge, in High Plains Drifter, 1973. His towering presence and cold gaze transformed him into a symbol of pure menace, a face audiences did not forget easily. James's personal life was marked by isolation rather than scandal. The weight of embodying hatred on screen bled into private life, creating distance and an inward turn that made intimacy difficult to sustain. That emotional strain intensified as his career progressed. Although unforgettable in films like In the Heat of the Night and later Unforgiven, James became typecast as villains, limiting his opportunities and eroding his sense of artistic freedom. By the early 1990s, the frustration became unbearable, leading him to walk away from acting entirely at the height of recognition. After leaving Hollywood, James retreated into a quieter existence devoted to painting and writing. He published poetry and memoirs, including Language of the Heart and Acting My Face, works that revealed a contemplative, wounded inner life far removed from the monsters he portrayed on screen. Anthony James died on May 26, 2020, at 77 years old in Cambridge, Massachusetts, after a battle with cancer. With an estimated net worth of around $2 million, he left behind a legacy defined by intensity. Dan Vadis as Dan Carlin. Dan Vadis was born on January 3, 1938, in Shanghai, China. At 35 years old, he played Dan Carlin, a savage outlaw driven by raw violence and moral darkness, in High Plains Drifter, 1973. Towering and physically imposing, Vadis embodied brute force on screen, a presence that made the film's cruelty feel dangerously real rather than theatrical. Behind that intimidating image, his personal life was marked by instability and emotional fracture. Vadis married Sharon Jessup, but the relationship unfolded under constant strain as his career drifted between continents and genres. Long absences, financial uncertainty, and growing personal demons slowly eroded domestic stability. Turning marriage into another battlefield, he struggled to survive rather than a refuge. Those inner battles soon became physical. Vadis wrestled with substance abuse, a problem that intensified as Hollywood's demand for muscular, tough guy roles faded. Injuries from years of extreme physical performance, combined with alcohol and narcotics, weakened a body once celebrated for its power. The strength that defined his career gradually became something he could no longer control. In his later years, Vadis remained connected to cinema but no longer at its center. He continued appearing in supporting roles alongside Clint Eastwood in films like The Gauntlet and Every Which Way But Loose, relying on familiarity rather than momentum. These projects paid the bills, but they also underscored how far he had fallen from his days as a leading man playing Hercules in international productions. Sadly, Dan Vadis died on June 11, 1987, at just 49 years old in Lancaster, California. His body was found in a car in the desert, and his death was ruled an accidental drug overdose caused by acute ethanol and heroin-morphine intoxication. With an estimated net worth of around $1 million, he left behind a tragic legacy, proof that immense physical strength offers no protection against addiction, isolation, and a life slowly slipping out of control. Walter Barnes as Sheriff Sam Shaw. Walter Barnes was born in 1918 in Parkersburg, West Virginia. At 55 years old, he played Sheriff Sam Shaw, the lawman whose authority masks and enables the town's corruption, in High Plains Drifter, 1973. His imposing frame and controlled delivery made the character unsettling, a reminder that decay often wears a badge. Barnes's personal strain began long before Hollywood. A former professional football player, he was forced to abandon the sport after repeated injuries, a sudden end that shattered a carefully built identity. The transition from athlete to actor was not romantic. It was born from loss, rehabilitation, and the quiet fear of becoming irrelevant once physical dominance faded. Marriage offered stability, but health steadily undermined it. Chronic physical pain from earlier injuries followed Barnes into middle age, placing pressure on daily life and long-term plans. The man who once relied on strength had to accept limitation, reshaping his sense of masculinity and self-worth behind closed doors. Professionally, Barnes carved out a steady but confined path in westerns and television, often cast as authority figures whose power was more symbolic than heroic. Appearances across classic Western productions kept him working, yet rarely advancing, reinforcing a career defined by reliability rather than recognition. By the time of High Plains Drifter, he understood the ceiling placed above him. Walter Barnes died in 1998 at 79 years old after complications related to diabetes. With an estimated net worth of $2 million, his legacy endures as one of quiet endurance, a man who survived reinvention, chronic illness, and fading opportunity without surrendering his professional discipline. Paul Brinegar as Looty Naylor. Paul Brinegar was born in 1917 in Tucumcari, New Mexico. At 55 years old, he played Looty Naylor, a wary town resident observing the slow moral collapse around him, in High Plains Drifter, 1973. Though understated, his presence carried the weight of a witness, someone shaped by fear rather than power. Brinegar's private life was unsettled by repeated emotional resets. Married twice, he endured divorce while juggling the pressures of a career that offered familiarity but little growth. The collapse of personal relationships mirrored the instability of an industry that rewarded recognition, yet punished stagnation. Health slowly tightened its grip as the years passed. Brinegar suffered from emphysema, a condition that drained energy and narrowed his world, turning simple exertion into effort. Breathing itself became labor, forcing him to confront mortality long before the public noticed his decline. His career was both a blessing and a trap. Immortalized as Wishbone on Rawhide, 1959 to 1965, Brinegar achieved television fame that proved difficult to escape. The role secured steady work but locked him into a single identity, making later opportunities scarce and reinforcing a sense of creative confinement even as audiences continued to adore him. Paul Brinegar died in 1995 at 77 years old due to complications from emphysema. With an estimated net worth of $1.5 million, he left behind a Western legacy defined by loyalty and familiarity. They brought fear, violence, and moral collapse to the screen, but time delivered something even crueler: Fame faded, bodies failed, and many paid a heavy price far from the spotlight. So what really happened to the faces you once feared and admired? Watch until the end, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more untold stories behind classic films.